What's Happening premiered in 1976 and became one of the most beloved sitcoms of its era. 50 years later, 5 of those 9 faces are gone, including the little girl was fighting a battle that just took its final turn this past August. And the show's biggest star secretly ended up homeless. This is where they all ended up. Number 1 is Danielle Spencer, who played Dee Thomas, Raj's sharp-tongued little sister, the pint-sized force of nature whose catchphrases, "Ooh, I'm telling mama," and "Ooh, you gonna get it, Raj," are quoted to this day. Spencer was only about 10 when the show began, and she stole scenes from grown comedians with timing far beyond her years. And of everyone in this cast, hers is the story that will stay with you the longest, because Danielle Spencer has spent almost her entire life surviving things that should have killed her. It started during the show's run. In 1977, when she was just 11 years old, Danielle was riding to the set with her stepfather, Tim Pelt, when their car was struck in a horrific accident. Pelt was killed. Danielle suffered a broken arm, leg, and pelvis, along with facial injuries, and fell into a coma for 3 weeks. And then, astonishingly, she recovered in time to return for the next season, her hair styled specially to hide the injuries still healing on her face. But the accident was never truly behind her. Decades later, in 2003, numbness in her legs led to the discovery of a spinal condition doctors linked to that childhood crash, requiring surgery and 8 months in a wheelchair as she learned to walk again. In 2014, she was diagnosed with breast cancer and underwent a double mastectomy. And in 2018, she had emergency brain surgery, once again traced back to the accident that nearly took her life as a child. Through all of it, she refused to be defined by it. Speaking on Oprah's Where Are They Now?, Danielle said that even after everything, she still believes there's a plan for her, that she's still here for a reason. And here is the most inspiring part. She walked away from Hollywood as a young woman to chase an entirely different dream. She earned her degree at Tuskegee University and became a veterinarian, practicing for over 2 decades in Los Angeles. In 2016, she was honored at the National Museum of African American History and Culture in Washington, and she told her whole story in her book, Through the Fire. As of today, Danielle Spencer is 60 years old and still here. Dee was the bratty kid sister who always got the last word. Danielle Spencer became the bravest person this show ever produced, a woman who has been broken more times than anyone should endure, and who has gotten back up every single time. Number 2 is Fred Berry, who played Freddie Rerun Stubbs. The suspenders, the red beret, the dance moves that made him the most beloved character on the entire show. Berry was in his mid-20s when What's Happening premiered in 1976, and almost overnight he became a national sensation. Rerun got his nickname because he kept repeating his classes in summer school. But there was nothing repeatable about Berry himself. He was an original, a born showman whose body moved like it was made of music. Here's a fact almost no one knows. The role of Rerun was originally written for a thin, white actor. Berry, a heavy-set black dancer who had honed his moves with the legendary dance troupe The Lockers, walked in and made the part so completely his own that it's now impossible to imagine anyone else in it. He turned a throwaway character into the heart of the show. By 29, he was a millionaire. And that's where the story turns dark. In a 1996 interview with People magazine, Berry laid it bare. He said the stress of sudden fame got to him, the constant fat jokes got to him, and he sank into heavy drug and alcohol abuse, money fueling a habit he'd carried since his teens. He was let go from the 1980s revival over a salary dispute after asking for a higher paycheck than the rest of the cast. He faced, by his own admission, 3 separate suicide attempts. But here is the redemption almost no viewer ever learned. In the 1990s, Berry turned his entire life around. He spent his time visiting churches, found his faith, and became a Baptist minister and motivational speaker. After a type 2 diabetes diagnosis, he lost 100 pounds and reclaimed his health. He died on October 21, 2003, of natural causes at his Los Angeles home at just 52 years old. Rerun was pure joy in a red beret, the guy who could make a whole nation smile by dancing. Fred Berry spent his real life fighting a darkness no audience ever saw, lost everything to it, and clawed his way back to peace before the end found him too soon. Number 3 is Mabel King, who played Mabel Mama Thomas, the warm, formidable matriarch whose word was law and whose love held the whole family together. King was 44 when the show premiered, and she brought a lifetime of stage power to the role. When Mama spoke, you listened. When Mama hugged you, you felt safe. She was the moral center of the entire series, and the anchor every other character revolved around. Here is what most viewers never knew about the woman behind the apron. Mabel King was a serious, accomplished actress with a film resume most of her castmates could only dream of. She appeared in The Wiz in 1978 alongside Diana Ross, reprising a role she'd originated on Broadway, played opposite Steve Martin in The Jerk in 1979, and worked with comedy legends across more than a decade of film and television, including The Gong Show movie. She wasn't a sitcom mom who got lucky. She was a veteran performer at the height of her craft, choosing to pour that talent into the most nurturing role on TV. King's final acting role came in a 1991 comedy, and her health declined in her later years. She died on November 9, 1999, in Los Angeles, at the age of 66, just 1 month before Shirley Hemphill, in a brutal season of loss for the show's fans. Mama Thomas was the guiding light who always had wisdom and an open heart for her son and his friends. Mabel King was a powerhouse of the stage and screen who chose again and again to play the woman holding everyone else up, and gave that role a dignity no one else could have. If a story like Danielle's moves you the way it moves me, please take a second to subscribe. Each of these videos takes weeks of research to get every fact and every date right, and your subscription is the only reason the next one gets made. Number 4 is Haywood Nelson, who played Dwayne Nelson, Raj's loyal best friend, the brainy, soft-spoken voice of reason, whose genuine warmth made him one of the first black teen idols on American television. Nelson was just 16 when the show premiered, and teenage girls across the country pinned his picture to their walls. Here is the surprising second act most viewers never knew about. Nelson didn't just coast on early fame. He'd actually started young, working in commercials and even landing a role on Broadway before the show made him a household name. But after the original series, he stepped almost entirely away from Hollywood to study architectural design and electronics engineering, a child star quietly becoming an engineer. When the revival, What's Happening Now, came around, he returned not only to reprise Dwayne on screen, but to serve as the show's technical director, using those very skills behind the camera. In the years since, he's reinvented himself yet again, writing, producing, and directing documentaries about African-American culture, and exploring new ventures at the intersection of technology and storytelling. As of today, Haywood Nelson is 64 years old. Dwayne was the genius who held the friend group together, the calm peacemaker with a mischievous grin underneath. Haywood Nelson lived that out for real. A teen heartthrob who quietly became an engineer and a storyteller, never content to be just one thing, always evolving. Number 5 is Shirley Hemphill, who played Shirley Wilson, the no-nonsense, quick-witted waitress at the diner whose deadpan comebacks could stop a room cold. Hemphill was 30 when the show began, and she was so naturally funny that the writers built entire scenes around her timing. Her famous line about serving Raj a thin slice of meat and nothing else became one of the show's signature moments, and her sharp tongue made her one of the most quotable characters on the series. Here is what most viewers never knew about how hard she fought for her career. After What's Happening was canceled, Hemphill auditioned to play a cook on Archie Bunker's Place, and lost the role. But the very next day, in a stroke of fortune that sounds almost scripted, she was offered her own sitcom, 1 in a Million, playing a taxi driver who suddenly inherits a fortune and a corporation from one of her passengers. The show debuted on ABC in January of 1980, but couldn't find an audience and was gone by that summer. Still, Hemphill never stopped working. She performed stand-up in nightclubs across the country, appeared on The Tonight Show starring Johnny Carson, returned for the 1980s revival, and became a regular at the famous Laugh Factory in Los Angeles, beloved by everyone who shared a stage with her. But her ending was a quiet tragedy. On December 10, 1999, Shirley Hemphill was found dead at her home in West Covina, California. She was just 52 years old, alone, discovered in the house where she lived. Shirley Wilson was the strong, independent woman who looked out for everyone else, the one with the legendary Sunday dinners and the open door. Shirley Hemphill gave the world decades of laughter from a nightclub stage and slipped away by herself, the way too many of comedy's brightest lights eventually do. Number 6 is Thalmus Rasulala, who played Bill Thomas, Raj and Dee's father, a tall, commanding presence with one of the most resonant voices in the business. Rasulala was 41 during his time on the show, and though his role was not the largest, he carried a gravity that elevated every scene he touched. Here is the remarkable career most viewers never knew about. Rasulala began on the New York stage in the 1960s under the name Jack Crowder, earning a Theatre World Award for his Broadway work, including a turn in the Pearl Bailey production of Hello, Dolly. He became a major figure in 1970s cinema, appearing in Blackula, Bucktown, Willie Dynamite, and decades later, New Jack City. But his most important work came in two landmark productions about the Black American experience: the acclaimed TV movie, The Autobiography of Miss Jane Pittman, and the groundbreaking miniseries, Roots, where he played Kunta Kinte's father, Amoro, a role watched by tens of millions and woven permanently into television history. Rasulala died on October 9, 1991, of a heart attack in Albuquerque, New Mexico, while on location. He was just 55 years old. Bill Thomas was the steady, dignified father at the edge of the family's chaos. Thalmus Rasulala was a serious dramatic actor who helped bring one of the most important stories in American television to life, and brought that same quiet authority to a sitcom living room, asking nothing more than to play a good man well. Number 7 is Earl Billings, who played Big Earl Barnett, the warm, fatherly figure who ran the local hangout and became the kind of steady, dependable man the whole neighborhood looked up to. Billings was around 31 during his time on the show, and his sturdy, reassuring presence made him the adult anchor the younger characters could lean on. Here is what most viewers never knew about the long road behind that gentle face. Earl Billings has quietly built one of the most enduring careers of anyone in this cast, a working character actor for over 6 decades. Born on July 4, 1945 in Cleveland, Ohio, he's been the reliable supporting pillar in film after film and show after show. Crimson Tide with Denzel Washington, Con Air with Nicolas Cage, Antoine Fisher, American Splendor, and Thank You for Smoking, along with episodes of The Jeffersons, ER, and True Blood. And here's the detail that makes audiences smile in recognition. For years, Billings was the man in the Aflac insurance commercials, playing the sidekick to the company's famous animated duck. As of today, Earl Billings is 80 years old, having reached that milestone in 2025. Big Earl was the steady neighborhood father everyone trusted. Earl Billings became exactly that in his profession. Never the headliner, always the dependable one. The actor-directors called again and again for half a century because they knew he'd never let the scene down. Number 8 is Debbi Morgan, who played Diane, a recurring role in the show's early days, in the years before she would grow into one of the most acclaimed and historically important Black actresses of her generation. Morgan was around 20 during her time on the show, a young performer still finding her footing, taking guest roles wherever she could on the sitcoms of the era. And here is the extraordinary career most viewers never knew was quietly beginning behind that small part. Born on September 20th, 1956 in Dunn, North Carolina, the daughter of a teacher and a butcher, Morgan was raised in the South Bronx and began acting in high school productions before training with New York's respected Negro Ensemble Company and the New Federal Theater. Her stage work led to a film debut in the controversial 1975 drama Mandingo, and steady television guest spots on shows like Good Times and What's Happening. But her real breakthrough was still ahead. In 1989, Debbi Morgan made history. She became the very first African-American actress ever to win a Daytime Emmy Award for Outstanding Supporting Actress for her landmark role as Dr. Angie Hubbard on All My Children, where she and her on-screen husband became daytime television's first Black super couple, adored by millions of viewers who tuned in every afternoon to watch their love story unfold. Then, in 1997, she reached another peak entirely, delivering a haunting, unforgettable performance as the clairvoyant Aunt Moselle in the film Eve's Bayou, a role that won her the Independent Spirit Award for Best Supporting Female and the praise of critics across the country. She has barely stopped working since, appearing in everything from Charmed to Love and Basketball to the hit crime drama Power. As of today, Debbi Morgan is 69 years old and still acting. Diane was a small early role on a 1970s sitcom, easy to overlook. Debbi Morgan took that modest beginning and turned it into a barrier-breaking, award-winning, decades-long career, living proof that the biggest story in a cast doesn't always belong to the biggest part. and that the quiet ones in the background are sometimes the ones destined to make history. Number 9 is Ernest Thomas, who played Roger Raj Thomas, the lead, the narrator, the charming, fast-talking heart of the entire series. If Rerun was the show's joy and Dwayne was its brain, Raj was its soul, the aspiring writer and level-headed leader of the trio, the one whose voice opened nearly every episode. And the real story of the man who played him is, in many ways, the most powerful arc of anyone in this cast. A journey from poverty to the top of television, to the bottom of the streets, and back again. Ernest Lee Thomas was born on March 26, 1949, in a poor working-class neighborhood of Gary, Indiana. Acting was his way out. He moved to New York City with almost nothing, enrolled in the prestigious American Academy of Dramatic Arts, and graduated in 1974, breaking into the business the hard way, on the Broadway stage. He made his Broadway debut that same year and appeared the next year in a revival of The Member of the Wedding, sharing the stage with a young, then unknown actress named Glenn Close. Then he moved to Los Angeles, and it was during the taping of a small guest role on The Jeffersons that he heard about an audition for a new sitcom loosely inspired by the film Cooley High. Here is the detail most viewers never knew. Out of more than 200 audition tapes, the producers chose Ernest Thomas. He was 26 years old, playing a teenager, and he captured Raj so completely. Funny, awkward, kind, instantly relatable, that audiences embraced him from the very first episode. To complete the look, he wore non-prescription glasses for the part. In real life, his vision issue was the opposite, a lifelong condition called amblyopia that he has managed quietly his entire career. But here is the heartbreaking turn that fame so often hides. When What's Happening ended in 1979, canceled despite strong ratings, Thomas, like Fred Berry, fell hard. He sank into a deep depression, struggled with addiction, and at his lowest point, the star of one of America's most popular sitcoms became homeless. The man millions had welcomed into their living rooms every week had nowhere of his own to sleep. And yet, like the survivor he played on screen, he found his way back. He rebuilt his life, leaned on his faith, and returned to the work he loved. He came back even stronger, reuniting with his TV wife on In the Heat of the Night, trading jokes with Martin Lawrence on Martin, appearing in Spike Lee's Malcolm X alongside Denzel Washington, and winning over an entirely new generation as the deadpan funeral director Mr. Omar on Everybody Hates Chris. He even toured in gospel stage productions, sharing the story of how far he'd fallen and how he'd climbed back. As of today, Ernest Thomas is 77 years old and still acting. Raj was the smooth operator who could talk his way out of any trouble and always landed on his feet. Ernest Thomas lived the hardest version of that story in real life. He reached the mountaintop, lost everything, slept without a roof over his head, and still found the strength to stand back up and reclaim the career that made him a legend. He is, in the truest sense, the heart of this show, not just because he played its lead, but because his whole life has been a testament to getting back up. They made America laugh for 3 short seasons in the 1970s, and today their stories scatter across the whole spectrum of what a life can become. Fred Berry rests in Los Angeles, the joyful dancer who found his peace before the end. Shirley Hemphill is gone too soon at 52. Mabel King, a month behind her. Thalmus Rasulala, lost on a film set at 55. But Dee, the little girl who cheated death again and again, is alive at 60 and healing people's animals in Los Angeles. Dwayne is 64 and still creating. Big Earl is 80 and was on screen for 60 years. Diane became an award-winning legend at 69. And Raj, Ernest Thomas, the voice that started every episode, the man who lost everything and found his way home, is 77 and still working. 5 of them are still here, proof that the family from What's Happening was never really just a sitcom. It was a group of real people who laughed, who suffered, who fell, and in the case of the ones still standing, who never stopped getting back up.